Hello and welcome to today's episode. I'm Dr. Olivia Bennett, and I'm absolutely thrilled you've joined me today. Have you ever found yourself standing at the edge of opportunity, heart racing, palms sweating, and that familiar voice in your head whispering, "You're not good enough"? Or perhaps you've achieved something remarkable only to dismiss it as luck or timing rather than acknowledging your own capabilities. If so, you're certainly not alone. Today, we're diving deep into a universal human experience that affects nearly everyone at some point in their lives: self-doubt and the transformative journey toward genuine confidence. The difference between those who remain trapped in cycles of self-doubt and those who build lasting confidence isn't about being born with some magical self-assurance gene. It's about understanding the mechanisms behind our insecurities and learning specific, actionable tools to reshape our relationship with ourselves. In the next hour, I'll be sharing evidence-based strategies that have helped thousands of me patients break free from the paralyzing grip of self-doubt and cultivate authentic confidence that weathers life's inevitable ups and downs. Whether you're struggling with imposter syndrome in your career, finding your voice in relationships, or simply wanting to feel more comfortable in your own skin, today's episode offers something valuable for you. So grab a notebook, find a comfortable spot, and let's begin this important journey together. A journey not just to temporary confidence boosts, but to a fundamentally new way of relating to yourself and your capabilities. Before we dive in, I want to clarify something important. Building genuine confidence isn't about developing an inflated ego or pretending you're perfect. True confidence is about embracing your wholeness, acknowledging both your strengths and your limitations with compassion and clarity. It's about developing a stable internal foundation that doesn't crumble when faced with challenges or criticism. And most importantly, it's a skill that can be learned and strengthened over time with the right tools and consistent practice. Let's start by understanding the root causes of self-doubt. Self-doubt rarely emerges in a vacuum. It has origins and triggers that, once identified, become much easier to address. For many people, self-doubt begins in childhood. Perhaps you had well-meaning but critical parents who emphasized your mistakes rather than your successes. Or maybe you experienced early academic or social challenges that left you feeling inadequate compared to peers. Traumatic experiences, bullying, or significant failures without proper support can all plant deep seeds of self-doubt. Cultural and societal factors play a powerful role too. We live in a world of carefully curated social media feeds where people's highlight reels are constantly on display. This creates an impossible standard of comparison that can make even the most accomplished person feel they're falling short. Additionally, certain demographics face systemic biases that can reinforce feelings of not belonging or not being enough. Whether in educational settings, workplaces, or broader social contexts, another major contributor to self-doubt is our own thinking patterns. Cognitive distortions, those automatic thought habits that skew how we interpret reality, can be particularly damaging. These include catastrophizing, where we imagine the worst possible outcomes; black and white thinking, where anything less than perfection feels like failure; mind reading, where we assume others are judging us negatively; and personalization, where we take excessive responsibility for external events. Understanding these origins isn't about placing blame or making excuses. It's about developing compassionate awareness. When you can recognize, "Oh, I'm doubting myself now because this situation reminds me of when I failed that important test in high school," it creates space between you and the emotion. This awareness is the first crucial step in changing your relationship with self-doubt. Now, let's explore how self-doubt typically manifests in our lives. Recognizing these patterns is essential because you can't change what you don't acknowledge. One common manifestation is procrastination. When we doubt our abilities to succeed at something, we often unconsciously delay starting it. This might look like excessive preparation, researching endlessly rather than taking action, or finding less important tasks to occupy your time. Ironically, this procrastination often leads to rushed work and suboptimal results, which then reinforces the original self-doubt. It's a classic self-fulfilling prophecy. Another manifestation is perfectionism. This might seem counterintuitive. Isn't perfectionism about high standards rather than self-doubt? But perfectionism is actually a protective mechanism. If you believe your worth is tied to flawless performance, you'll exhaust yourself trying to achieve the impossible standard of perfection to avoid the anticipated pain of judgment or rejection. This relentless pursuit often leads to burnout, anxiety, and paradoxically, underachievement as projects remain perpetually unfinished because they're never good enough. Self-doubt also frequently appears as constant validation seeking. Do you find yourself unable to make decisions without consulting multiple people? Do you need excessive reassurance about your appearance, your work, or your decisions? While seeking occasional input is healthy, an inability to trust your own judgment is a clear sign that self-doubt has taken hold. Avoidance is another common manifestation. Turning down opportunities for advancement, refusing to try new experiences, or staying in unhealthy but familiar situations can all stem from the self-protective instinct to avoid situations where you might fail or be judged. This avoidance provides temporary relief but ultimately limits your growth and reinforces the belief that you're incapable of handling challenges. Perhaps most insidious is the imposter phenomenon. That persistent feeling that you've somehow fooled everyone into thinking you're competent, and it's just a matter of time before you're exposed as a fraud. This experience is particularly common among high achievers and can lead to extreme anxiety, overwork, and an inability to internalize your accomplishments. Does any of this sound familiar? If so, please know that recognizing these patterns doesn't mean there's something wrong with you. Quite the opposite. This awareness is the birthplace of change. Now that we understand how self-doubt develops and manifests, let's explore the proven tools and strategies that can help you break free from its grip. The first tool in our confidence-building toolkit is cognitive restructuring. This cornerstone technique from cognitive behavioral therapy helps you identify, challenge, and reframe the unhelpful thoughts that fuel self-doubt. Start by becoming aware of your automatic negative thoughts, those rapid, often unconscious judgments that pop into your mind throughout the day. When you notice self-doubt arising, pause and ask yourself, what am I telling myself right now? Write down these thoughts word for word, without censorship. You might be surprised by their harshness. I'm going to embarrass myself. I always mess things up. They'll realize I don't belong here. Once you've captured these thoughts, the next step is to evaluate them objectively. Ask yourself, what evidence supports this thought? What evidence contradicts it? Am I confusing feelings with facts? What cognitive distortions might be at play here? This evaluation process creates space between you and your thoughts, helping you see them as mental events rather than absolute truths. Then comes the reframing step. Based on your evaluation, create alternative thoughts that are both more accurate and more helpful. For example, I'm going to embarrass myself might become, public speaking makes me nervous, but I've prepared thoroughly and managed similar situations before. The goal isn't false positivity, but realistic optimism. Thoughts that acknowledge challenges while maintaining a sense of possibility and agency. With practice, this process becomes more automatic. You'll start catching unhelpful thoughts more quickly and developing the mental flexibility to consider alternative perspectives. This doesn't mean you'll never experience self-doubt again, but rather that you'll develop a healthier relationship with it, recognizing doubtful thoughts without being controlled by them. Let's try a practical example. Imagine you're about to give an important presentation at work. The self-doubt thoughts emerge. I'm not as qualified as the others. They'll see right through me. If I make a mistake, everyone will lose respect for me. Using cognitive restructuring, you'd first recognize these as thoughts, not facts. Then you'd evaluate them. Have I successfully presented before? Yes, multiple times. Do people typically lose all respect over a single mistake? No, that's catastrophizing. Is it possible others feel similarly nervous when they present? Probably. Your reframe thoughts might be, I was chosen to give this presentation because my perspective is valuable. Everyone makes occasional mistakes, and one error won't define me. I've prepared thoroughly and have unique insights to offer. Notice how this reframed perspective isn't about denying nervousness or guaranteeing perfect success. It's about creating a more balanced, realistic assessment that allows you to move forward effectively despite uncertainty. The next powerful tool for building confidence is behavioral activation, or what I sometimes call acting ASIF. This approach recognizes a fundamental truth about human psychology. Our actions can shape our feelings just as much as our feelings shape our actions. When caught in self-doubt, we often wait to feel confident before taking action. But this approach gets things backward. Confidence doesn't typically precede action. It follows it. By acting in ways that a confident person would act, even when you don't feel confident internally, you create evidence that challenges your self-doubtful beliefs. This doesn't mean pretending to be someone you're not or engaging in toxic positivity. It means mindfully choosing behaviors that align with your values and goals, even when self-doubt is present. Over time, these behaviors generate experiences that naturally build genuine confidence. Start small with behaviors that stretch your comfort zone without overwhelming you. If social situations trigger self-doubt, you might begin by asking one question during a meeting or initiating a brief conversation with a friendly colleague. If you doubt your creative abilities, you might commit to 10 minutes of daily creative practice without judgment about the outcome. The key is consistency. Each time you take action despite self-doubt, you're teaching your nervous system an important lesson. I can handle situations I thought were threatening. My doubts don't have to control me choices. This gradual accumulation of evidence has a powerful effect on your confidence over time. Document your experiences along the way. After each courageous action, reflect on what happened, what you learned, and how it compares to what your self-doubt predicted. Did the catastrophic outcome you feared materialize? What unexpected positive outcomes occurred? What new capabilities did you discover in yourself? A particularly powerful form of behavioral activation is what psychology researcher Amy Cuddy calls power posing. Research suggests that adopting expansive, confident postures, even briefly in private before challenging situations, can reduce stress hormones and increase feelings of power and confidence. While standing tall with your shoulders back, chin up, and arms outstretched or on your hips for just 2 minutes can produce measurable physiological changes that influence how you feel and perform. Other nonverbal behaviors that can boost confidence include making deliberate eye contact, slowing your speech rate, reducing apologetic language, and practicing intentional breathing techniques that activate your parasympathetic nervous system. These approaches leverage the powerful mind-body connection, using physical behavior to influence psychological states. Remember, behavioral activation isn't about forcing yourself into terrifying situations or ignoring legitimate safety concerns. It's about recognizing when self-doubt, not actual danger, is holding you back from experiences that matter to you. By taking small, consistent steps in the direction of your values, you build not just confidence, but also self-trust. The knowledge that you can rely on yourself to face challenges, even when it's uncomfortable. This brings us to our next essential tool, self-compassion. If I could emphasize just one approach for building lasting confidence, it would be this. Self-compassion is often misunderstood as self-indulgence or lowering your standards. In reality, research consistently shows the opposite. People who practice self-compassion are more likely to take responsibility for their mistakes, demonstrate greater motivation for self-improvement, and show more resilience when facing setbacks. As defined by pioneering researcher Dr. Kristen Neff, self-compassion consists of 3 components: self-kindness versus self-judgment, common humanity versus isolation, and mindfulness versus over-identification with difficult emotions. Self-kindness means treating yourself with the same warmth, understanding, and support you would offer a good friend facing similar circumstances. When you make a mistake or face a failure, rather than launching into harsh self-criticism, you acknowledge the pain of the situation while offering yourself encouragement and care. Common humanity involves recognizing that imperfection, suffering, and self-doubt are part of the shared human experience, not something that separates you from others. When struggling with self-doubt, we often fall into the trap of believing we're uniquely flawed or inadequate. Remembering that countless others, including those who appear supremely confident, experience similar doubts creates a sense of connection rather than shameful isolation. Mindfulness, the third component, involves holding your painful thoughts and feelings in balanced awareness without suppressing them or becoming completely identified with them. Rather than telling yourself, I am a failure, over identification, or pretending you're not upset about a mistake suppression, mindfulness allows you to acknowledge, I'm having thoughts of failure right now, creating space between you and the experience. Let's practice a brief self-compassion exercise together. Think of a situation where self-doubt is affecting you currently. Notice the thoughts, emotions, and bodily sensations that arise. Then, place a hand on your heart or another soothing spot and silently say to yourself, this is a moment of suffering. Mindfulness? Suffering is part of life. Many others feel exactly as I do right now. It's a common humanity. May I be kind to myself in this moment. May I give myself the compassion I need. So self-kindness, take a deep breath and notice how this shift in orientation feels. Many people report an immediate sense of relief and spaciousness, even if the challenging situation remains unchanged. For those who find self-compassion difficult, and many do, especially if you've been habituated to self-criticism, I recommend starting with what psychologist Dr. Christopher Germer calls backdoor approaches to self-compassion. This might involve asking, what would I say to a friend in this situation? Or how would someone who loves me unconditionally respond to me right now? Sometimes it's easier to access compassion when we temporarily step outside our own perspective. Regular practice of formal self-compassion meditations, such as the loving kindness meditation or the self-compassion break, can help rewire your default response to self-doubt and failure. Over time, these practices create new neural pathways that make self-compassion your automatic response rather than self-criticism. It's important to address a common fear about self-compassion, the concern that being kind to yourself will make you complacent or unmotivated. Research conclusively shows the opposite. Self-compassion provides the emotional safety needed to honestly acknowledge weaknesses and mistakes without defensive denial. When you're not afraid of harsh self-punishment, you're much more willing to see yourself clearly and take risks that lead to growth. Now let's explore another crucial dimension of building confidence: values, clarification, and committed action. One of the most destabilizing aspects of self-doubt is how it disconnects us from our internal compass. We become so preoccupied with others' judgments and avoiding failure that we lose touch with what truly matters to us. Values are your heart's deepest desires for how you want to behave and what you want to stand for in this life. Unlike goals, which can be achieved or failed, values are ongoing directions you can embody in any moment, regardless of external circumstances or internal states like self-doubt. To clarify your values, ask yourself, what qualities do I want to bring to my relationships? What kind of contribution do I want to make? How do I want to treat myself and others, even when it's difficult? What do I want to stand for in this world? Your answers reveal what matters most to you, whether that's authenticity, courage, compassion, creativity, justice, learning, or countless other possibilities. Once you've identified your core values, the next step is committed action, making choices guided by these values rather than by self-doubt or fear. For example, if you value learning but self-doubt makes you hesitant to try new things, a committed action might be signing up for that challenging course despite your fears of inadequacy. If you value connection but self-doubt makes you hold back in relationships, committed action might involve sharing something vulnerable with a trusted friend. Values-guided living builds confidence in several ways. First, it provides clarity about what success truly means to you beyond societal metrics or others' approval. Second, it helps you make choices from your deeper wisdom rather than reactive emotions. And third, it creates a profound sense of integrity as your actions increasingly align with your authentic self. I often recommend creating a values-based behavioral plan that specifically targets areas where self-doubt holds you back. This plan identifies concrete actions that express your values in daily life, gradually expanding your comfort zone while keeping you anchored in what matters most. The goal isn't to eliminate discomfort or self-doubt, but rather to build your capacity to act effectively even when these experiences are present. This leads us to another essential confidence-building tool: developing psychological flexibility. Psychological flexibility is the ability to stay present with difficult experiences without unnecessary defense while continuing to move in valued directions. It's a core component of confidence because life inevitably brings challenges that trigger self-doubt. The question isn't whether you'll experience self-doubt, but how you'll relate to it when it arises. One powerful approach to developing psychological flexibility comes from acceptance and commitment therapy, ACT. This evidence-based framework teaches skills for relating differently to difficult thoughts and feelings, including the hallmark experiences of self-doubt. A key ACT technique is cognitive diffusion, learning to see thoughts as passing mental events rather than literal truths that must control your behavior. When self-doubt thoughts arise, "I'm not good enough," or "I'll probably fail," instead of getting entangled in them, you can practice noticing, "I'm having the thought that I'm not good enough," or even, "There goes my mind," doing what minds do, generating doubtful thoughts. You might visualize these thoughts as leaves floating down a stream, clouds passing in the sky, or actors in a stage, present but not necessarily defining reality. Or you might experiment with saying the thought in a cartoon voice, repeating it rapidly until it becomes just sounds, or giving your inner critic, and aim to create some helpful distance. Another aspect of psychological flexibility involves developing present moment awareness. Self-doubt typically pulls us out of the present, catastrophizing about the future or ruminating about past failures. Regular mindfulness practice builds your capacity to anchor in the here and now, where you can make choices based on what the situation actually requires rather than what your self-doubt predicts. A simple practice is to pause throughout your day and briefly notice your sensory experience. 5 things you can see, 4 things you can touch, 3 things you can hear, 2 things you can smell, and 1 thing you can taste. This grounding exercise pulls you out of rumination and into direct experience, where self-doubt has less power. Acceptance is another crucial component of psychological flexibility. This doesn't mean resignation or approving of unpleasant experiences. Rather, it means opening up to your experience as it is, without struggle or avoidance, so you can respond more effectively. When it comes to self-doubt, acceptance means acknowledging, yes, I'm experiencing doubt right now, without needing to eliminate it before taking action. You might practice saying, I'm noticing self-doubt and I'm making room for it while I do what matters to me. This stance creates freedom and possibility even when difficult emotions are present. Instead of waiting for self-doubt to disappear, which might never happen, you learn to bring it along for the ride while you direct your life toward meaningful experiences. Now, let's address a crucial but often overlooked aspect of building confidence: managing your environment and relationships. While much of our discussion has focused on internal changes, the external context of your life profoundly impacts your confidence levels. We are inherently social creatures, and the quality of our relationships significantly influences how we see ourselves. Research consistently shows that supportive, authentic connections foster confidence, while critical, controlling, or undermining relationships can entrench self-doubt regardless of your internal efforts. Take an honest inventory of your relationships. Who consistently makes you feel more capable, accepted, and inspired? Who leaves you feeling drained, inadequate, or defensive? While not all difficult relationships can or should be eliminated, you can make conscious choices about where to invest your emotional energy and how to set boundaries that protect your sense of self. Seek out what psychologists call growth-fostering relationships, connections characterized by mutual empathy, authenticity, and empowerment. These relationships provide both validation for who you are and encouragement for who you're becoming. They offer honest feedback without shaming and support without enabling. Similarly, your physical environment and media consumption affect your confidence in subtle but powerful ways. Surroundings that reflect your values and aspirations naturally reinforce your positive self-concept. This might mean creating a workspace that energizes you, choosing media that inspires rather than triggers unhealthy comparison, or simply reducing clutter that drains your mental resources. Pay particular attention to your social media habits. While online connections can be valuable, research clearly links excessive social media use with increased social comparison and diminished self-esteem. Consider periodic digital detoxes, curating your feeds to include diverse and affirming content, or setting boundaries around when and how you engage with platforms that trigger self-doubt. Another environmental factor is your routine and habits. Regular exercise, adequate sleep, balanced nutrition, and time in nature are all strongly associated with improved mood, reduced anxiety, and greater resilience. all contributors to natural confidence. These basics are not superficial add-ons but fundamental supports for psychological well-being. Now let's discuss an often misunderstood aspect of confidence: the relationship between competency and confidence. While confidence isn't solely about skill, many highly skilled people still struggle with self-doubt. Developing genuine competence in areas that matter to you provides an authentic foundation for self-trust. The key is deliberate practice, focused feedback, rich skill development rather than mindless repetition. Whether you're learning a musical instrument, developing professional expertise, or mastering a sport, the process of breaking down complex skills, focusing on specific elements, receiving feedback, and gradually integrating improvements builds not just ability but earned confidence. However, there's an important caveat: perfectionism can hijack the competence building process. The goal isn't flawless performance, but rather progressive improvement and the willingness to be a beginner. Embracing what Stanford psychologist Carol Dweck calls a growth mindset, the belief that abilities can be developed through dedication and hard work, allows you to approach learning with curiosity rather than judgment. Consider identifying one meaningful area where developing greater competence would enhance your confidence. Create a deliberate practice plan that includes specific goals, regular feedback opportunities, and metrics to track your progress. Remember, the aim isn't to prove your worth, but rather to experience the natural confidence that emerges from dedicated engagement with challenging, meaningful pursuits. This brings us to another powerful confidence building approach: evidence collection and rewriting your narrative. The stories we tell about ourselves, our capabilities, our worth, our place in the world, profoundly shape our experience of reality. When caught in self-doubt, we tend to construct narratives that emphasize our limitations and failures while minimizing our strengths and successes. Begin challenging this skewed perspective by actively collecting evidence that contradicts your self-doubtful beliefs. Create a confidence portfolio, a physical or digital collection of achievements, positive feedback, challenges overcome, and moments of courage. Include testimonials from others, tangible results of your efforts, and documentation of growth over time. Review this portfolio regularly, especially before challenging situations that typically trigger self-doubt. This isn't about inflating your ego, but rather about correcting the negativity bias that selectively remembers failures while forgetting successes. By intentionally balancing the evidence your brain considers, you create a more accurate self-assessment. Next, work on consciously reauthoring your personal narrative. If you've been telling yourself a story like, "I'm just not a confident person," or "I always crumble under pressure," challenge this deterministic language. Instead, craft a narrative that acknowledges both struggles and strengths, emphasizes growth over time, and leaves room for continual evolution. For example, "I've faced significant challenges with confidence, especially in professional settings. At times, this has held me back from pursuing opportunities. And yet, I've also shown courage in many situations, from moving to a new city alone to speaking up about ethical concerns at work. Each time I act despite fear, I'm developing my confidence muscles. I'm learning that confidence isn't something you either have or don't have. It's a capacity I'm actively cultivating." Notice how this narrative acknowledges difficulties without defining identity by them, recognizes growth that's already occurred, and frames confidence as an evolving process rather than a fixed trait. This balanced, dynamic story creates psychological space for transformation. Another important aspect of rewriting your narrative involves examining the role models and cultural messages that have shaped your beliefs about confidence. Many of us have internalized limiting stereotypes about who can be confident and how confidence should be expressed. These might include gender norms, e.g., confident women being labeled aggressive, cultural values that equate humility with self-deprecation, or family patterns where standing out was discouraged. By becoming aware of these influences, you can make conscious choices about which messages to retain and which to revise. Seek out diverse role models who embody confidence in ways that resonate with your authentic self, rather than trying to force yourself into a one-size-fits-all mold of what confidence should look like. Now, let's address how to navigate setbacks in your confidence journey, because they will inevitably occur. Confidence isn't a linear progression, but rather a practice that includes both advances and retreats. The difference between those who develop lasting confidence and those who remain trapped in self-doubt isn't the absence of setbacks, but how they respond when setbacks occur. When you experience a confidence setback, perhaps freezing during a presentation, receiving critical feedback, or facing rejection, your first step is mindful acceptance. Acknowledge the pain without minimizing it or beating yourself up for feeling it. This hurts, and it's natural to feel discouraged right now. Next, practice deliberate perspective taking. Ask yourself, how will I view this situation a year from now? What would I say to someone else facing this exact circumstance? What's the broader context here? These questions help prevent catastrophizing and restore a sense of proportion. Once you've created some emotional space, extract the learning. Every setback contains information that can strengthen your future approach if you're willing to look for it. Ask specific questions like, what worked even slightly? What would I do differently next time? What resources or support would have helped me navigate this better? Finally, take a small recovery action, something that re-engages you with your values and rebuilds momentum. After a social setback, this might mean reaching out to a supportive friend rather than isolating. After a professional disappointment, it might involve revising your approach and trying again or applying your skills in a different context. Remember, resilience isn't about never falling. It's about developing the capacity to rise again after difficulties. Each time you navigate a setback without allowing it to define you, your confidence deepens in a way that superficial success never could. Let's now discuss a special category of self-doubt that deserves focused attention: imposter syndrome. This particular form of self-doubt is characterized by persistent feelings of fraudulence despite evident success. Those experiencing imposter syndrome attribute their achievements to luck, timing, or others' misjudgment of their abilities rather than their own competence. If you struggle with imposter feelings, first recognize how common this experience is. Studies suggest up to 70% of people experience imposter syndrome at some point, particularly in achievement-oriented fields and among underrepresented groups facing stereotypes about their capabilities. Many highly successful individuals, from Maya Angelou to Albert Einstein, have acknowledged battling persistent feelings of fraudulence throughout their careers. One effective strategy for addressing imposter syndrome is to externalize your achievements. Create a concrete record of your qualifications, accomplishments, and positive feedback, not just formal credentials, but also times you've helped others, solved problems, or contributed unique perspectives. Review this record regularly, especially when imposter feelings intensify. Another approach involves reframe achievement itself. Imposter syndrome thrives in environments where worth is equated with perfect performance and exceeding others. By consciously shifting toward values like learning, contribution, authenticity, or growth, you create alternative metrics for success that don't depend on proving your superiority or perfection. Imposter syndrome often involves anxiety about being found out. A powerful antidote is selective vulnerability, strategically sharing your learning process, occasional struggles, or areas of development with trusted others. This breaks the isolation that fuels imposter feelings and often reveals that others experience similar doubts, despite outward appearances of unshakable confidence. For those in positions with few similar others, perhaps you're the only woman in leadership or the first person from your background in your field. Finding community with those who share your identity can be transformative. These connections provide validation for the unique challenges you face and models for navigating them with authenticity. Now let's explore how to express confidence effectively in various contexts. Many people equate confidence with never showing vulnerability or uncertainty, but this creates a brittle facade rather than genuine self-assurance. True confidence involves appropriate transparency about both your capabilities and limitations. In professional settings, confident communication includes phrases like, based on my experience with X, I believe, rather than apologetic or overly hedged language. It means asking questions when you don't know something rather than pretending to understand. It involves taking appropriate credit for your contributions while also acknowledging others. In personal relationships, confident authenticity means expressing your needs and boundaries clearly while remaining open to others' perspectives. It involves showing vulnerability when appropriate without choosing self-deprecation as a social strategy. It means being able to say both yes when something aligns with your values and no when it doesn't, without excessive justification. Remember, confidence isn't about dominating conversations or never experiencing doubt. It's about being present with whatever arises: uncertainty, fear, enthusiasm, conviction, while staying connected to your values and treating yourself and others with respect. As we approach the conclusion of our discussion, let's address a question that often arises: how long will it take to build lasting confidence? The honest answer is that confidence development isn't a fixed timeline, but rather an ongoing practice. Some changes may occur rapidly. You might notice more psychological flexibility within weeks of consistent practice. Other aspects evolve more gradually as you accumulate experiences that contradict limiting beliefs. Rather than focusing on reaching some imagined confidence finish line, I encourage you to notice and celebrate incremental shifts. Moments when you took action despite doubt, spoke up when you would have previously remained silent, or responded to yourself with compassion instead of criticism. These seemingly small changes are the building blocks of profound transformation over time. As we wrap up today's episode, let's summarize the key tools and strategies we've explored for breaking the cycle of self-doubt and building lasting confidence. Cognitive restructuring helps you identify, challenge, and reframe the unhelpful thoughts that fuel self-doubt. Behavioral activation allows you to build confidence through action rather than waiting for confidence to precede action. Self-compassion creates an internal environment of kindness and understanding that supports risking, learning, and growing. Values clarification and committed action connect you to what truly matters, providing direction when self-doubt arises. Psychological flexibility helps you relate differently to difficult thoughts and feelings, creating freedom to act effectively even when self-doubt is present. Managing your environment and relationships ensures your external context supports rather than undermines your confidence. Developing competence through deliberate practice provides an authentic foundation for self-trust in areas that matter to you. Evidence collection and narrative revision correct distorted self-perceptions and create empowering, accurate self-stories. Strategies for navigating setbacks and imposter syndrome help you maintain momentum through inevitable challenges. Effective confidence expression allows you to communicate authentically in both professional and personal contexts. Remember, building confidence isn't about eliminating self-doubt altogether, a goal that would leave you terrified of normal human experiences. Instead, it's about developing a new relationship with doubt, one where it neither controls your choices nor defines your worth. It's about creating internal spaciousness where doubtful thoughts can arise without overwhelming you, where you can acknowledge uncertainty while still moving toward what matters. I invite you to select just one or two strategies from today's episode to practice consistently over the next month. Notice what shifts, be patient with the process, and remember that each small step compounds over time into significant transformation. And please know that your journey toward greater confidence contributes to our collective well-being. When you learn to honor your gifts and voice your truth, you create permission for others to do the same. Your growing confidence creates ripples that extend far beyond your individual experience. As we come to the end of today's episode, I want to thank you for your attention and openness to these ideas. Building confidence is both personal and courageous work, and I'm honored to be part of your journey. If you found value in today's discussion, I'd be deeply grateful if you'd take a moment to leave a comment below sharing one insight or strategy you plan to implement. Your experiences might inspire others facing similar challenges. And if this content resonated with you, please consider subscribing to our channel and giving this video a thumbs up. These simple actions help more people discover these tools during times when they're struggling with self-doubt. Remember, we release new episodes on mental health and personal development every week, so hit that notification bell to stay updated. Until next time, be kind to yourself as you practice these strategies. Confidence isn't built through harsh self-judgment, but through consistent, compassionate practice. I believe in your capacity to transform your relationship with self-doubt, one small brave action at a time. This is Dr. Olivia Bennett, wishing you well on your journey toward authentic confidence. Wait before you go. I'd love to hear from you in the comments section below. What's one situation where self-doubt typically shows up for you, and which strategy from today's episode do you think might help? Your share might be exactly what someone else needs to hear today. Take care, and I'll see you in the next episode.